Serious, what is the creepiest thing you found in a forest? A dead raven skewered on a stick that was sticking up from the ground like a signpost. It had its wings spread wide and beak and eyes open. Found a tombstone in the woods when we were kids. The area in front of it where the casket would be was sunken in about 6 inches. Looking around, there were other similar sunken in areas but no other tombstones. It was a woman's name on the tombstone and she was born in the 1800s and died in 1914. This place we called the tar pits. They were these deep ruts in the ground, maybe 3 to 4 feet deep, and they were filled with this purple-green muck that acted a lot like quicksand. It sucked whatever stepped in it in. If a small vehicle got stuck in it, it normally took a bulldozer to pull them out, with significant damage to the vehicle in the process. The stuff would rip the bumper right off of a vehicle while being pulled out. One summer, we had a brutal drought, and the tar pits dried up. The bottom of the holes was a giant pile of bones. Animals that I figure stepped in it and couldn't get out. A lot were clearly deer, with some squirrels, possums, and some that could have been foxes or dogs. I would still love to know what that shit was. I haven't been over there in years. I don't know if it's still like that. A sled caught in a tree branch about 30 feet in the air. A silver women's ring that had, "It's too late," etched into it. I still have it to this day. The weirdest part is that it was laying on its edge, perfectly, when I came across it. Caged dogs, used for dog fighting, was both brutal and terrifying. They were vicious, barking their heads off, and ready to rip my throat out, but covered in scars, missing chunks of their body, and without ears. I believe the owners sheared them off to prevent competitor dogs from having something to grab hold of. My mother's story: she had gotten out of the car to stretch during a long drive, and she came upon a clearing maybe 5 minutes into the woods. On one side of the clearing was a tent with someone moving around inside of it. Inside the clearing was a pile of deer carcasses, maybe 20 in all, and one dead golden retriever on top. She was so freaked out that she ducked behind a bush only to find a set of women's lingerie and a pair of high-heeled shoes crammed under the bush. She ran and never looked back. I still get the creeps from this story. A pair of shoes along with an old Nokia phone. I discovered a suicide. Smelled decay while on a hike through Baldur's Flatirons, scrambled up a boulder into a small rock shelter that served as a climbing access, and my sight was met with the underside of a pair of boots and a Glock in a shriveling black hand. He'd been there for about a week, so animals had at him. Not pretty. A face full of maggots and wasps, still but moving. Made me hyper-aware of my eye's own orbits. I had dreams of wasps crawling in and around them. The smell stuck with me the longest. Back in the summer of 2018, I decided to go hiking with a friend. About half an hour into the trail, we discovered someone hanging from a tree. The guy couldn't have been older than maybe 30 to 31, but it was quite the surprise and shock from what looked like an apparent suicide. When I was around 12 years old, I was in the woods across from my house with my cousins. There are a few spots with random junk strewn around. Country folks love dumping garbage places for free, so we were poking around. We found an old-fashioned milk can and tipped it over. A bunch of liquid spilled out, followed by a dead baby pig. We completely freaked out and ran home. Probably should have told our parents. This happened about 15 years ago, where my friends and I went walking in the woods in West Michigan during early spring when there weren't any leaves on the trees and the ground was pretty matted down after the winter. We were having fun on shrooms and taking a long walk when I spotted a small sealed jar, so I picked it up and there was something inside. I got excited because it looked really old and it seemed someone either lost it or they wanted someone to find a time capsule or something cool. Anyways, I opened it up and it was poop. That was the highlight of the day. When I was about, I would say 12, a dog of ours went missing. At the time we lived in an area with a pretty big forest behind it. My dad and I decided to search for her about a day after she went missing. We came to a small clearing in the woods. We smelled something horrid and looked around. There we saw her lying down with what looked like a large knife of some sort basically propped up on her stomach. The brief glimpse I got of her still haunts my dreams. This was about 7 years ago. I had woods behind my house as a kid. I used to go back there by myself all the time and explore. One day when I was 12 or so, I stumbled across what looked like a little campsite under dirt and tree outcropping. There were towels, clothes, and some car parts scattered all about. This is fairly odd for a small stretch of woods in a regular neighborhood. I didn't think anything much of it then, cause there was plenty of junk like tires back there anyways. 2 days later, all of the kids in the neighborhood played a nightly game of hide and go seek tag. While my sister was looking for a hiding spot, a random man jumped out from a bush and ran into the woods. My sister ran home to tell our parents that a strange man was hiding around the neighborhood. The cops were coincidentally in the neighborhood at the time investigating car break-ins. Turns out the guy my sister came across was stealing car parts and hiding them out in the woods behind my house. It's not super creepy, but was hiking with a guy and stumbled upon an entire deer skeleton. All the bones were there except the skull. Everything else was picked completely clean. A raccoon head. Just the head, pretty fresh. I checked it out pretty carefully and it hadn't been decapitated with a knife or anything, so I figure an owl had sat in a nearby tree picking it apart and just dropped the head. But it was unsettling. Exploring the woods as a kid, my friend and I found the pit that the local chicken farm, small-scale non-industrial, dumped the bodies into. My brother and I found a dead dog, but looking back I am pretty sure he had killed the dog and just brought us there later. Spent most of my childhood in the woods, so I've got a couple stories. The creepiest man-made thing was likely a prank. Someone set up a bunch of those little Blair Witch stick people things around campsites the year it came out. I only saw brief bits of the movie before that, but the older kids in my Boy Scout troop were freaked out and I got scared secondhand, haha. The actual creepiest thing was a live mountain lion. I don't know if the wind kept our scent off it or if it just didn't feel like messing with humans or what, but the bastard walked almost right through our camp. Probably 7 to 7.5 feet long. You don't realize how big that is until you see it skulking past, muscles rippling under its pelt. A fleshlight filled with potato salad or something of similar consistency. I'm done with that park. A Polaroid photo of a naked mid-20s guy in a bathtub looking very scared in 2007. We camp a lot. Where we camp there are a lot of old mining cabins out in the mountains along the Forest Service roads. No one is ever back there except people ripping through in a jeep. We were camping one time and my kids brought a metal detector with to see if we could find anything. Buried about 3 feet down around one of the old cabins was this big 1 foot by 1 foot metallic rock. Looked almost like silver. It was very heavy and would go off under the precious metals setting on the metal detector. We wrapped it up in a towel we had laying around and set it in my truck. We were certain we found something expensive. When we got home, I grabbed it and thought, that's weird, it seems lighter. I unwrapped the towel to find a bunch of broken twigs. My kids, 11 and 13, thought I was messing with them. We still go back every year looking for it but have no clue to this day why it was gone. Maybe cursed and a good thing it's gone. I was with a buddy and we were thirsty and had nothing to drink. We went looking for some berries to eat and found a cooler full of ice and beer. Carcass of a dead, murdered dog near some upside-down crosses and pentagrams. Not kidding. New Jersey is a hell of a place. An old tin roof shack with piles of clothes and voodoo bottles. My parents owned a large piece of property with fields, patches of woods and multiple dilapidated 100-plus-year-old structures. Out of all the creepy shacks and barns, the one that gave me the heebie-jeebies was one in the woods at the corner of our property by a swampy pond. It was uninsulated with a bare wood floor and no lights and a deep hole outside for water. There was an old crusty white wall tire tied to a tree like a swing. My dad said when they first moved out there 30 years ago there was an old black man that lived there called the Preacher Man. He had a guitar and would play songs and sing spirituals and stuff. He said the old guy would roll a wheelbarrow up and down our deserted country roads singing to himself and collecting junk out of the ditches. Hence the mound of leftover garbage still inside the shack. The woods were always quiet around there, which was nice for hiking around during the day but got spooky in the evening. One day I noticed that there were old bottles placed high up in the branches of a bunch of the trees around the shack and the pond. Supposedly it had something to do with voodoo.